in Charlotte, North Carolina, as protests continue to rage on in the shooting death. And this is the sad reality, right? It seems like every time we report on a shooting death, they come back to back to back to back. And so Friday it was Terrence Crutcher, and on Tuesday it was Keith Lamont Scott. And so riots and protests first, and then there were some rioters in the crowd. Riots did break out. People were hurt. Apparently there was a young man who was shot last night at a protest, and there's no clear indication as to who shot the young man. But and I don't believe his name has been released, but he has died. The young man that was shot, and actually let me see if I can find his name. The young man that was shot last night in Charlotte has died. So they are opening a homicide investigation into that. But the news in terms of the case and the actual shooting death of Keith Lamont Scott is that the family has seen the video. There have been multiple people who have seen the video, and the family has indicated that you cannot tell. The video is not definitive. You cannot make a definitive conclusion as to whether or not he was holding a gun. But they did say after seeing the video, you can clearly see that he was not making aggressive movements and that he was backing up. So while they can't say he had a gun or not, the other side of this is that the Charlotte Police Department made the bold statement the other day, I believe on Tuesday night, if not Wednesday morning. They made the statement that the video was clear that that Keith Lamont Scott had a gun in his hand. They immediately backtracked this morning. This morning they backtracked it and said that it is not clear. It was not definitively clear whether or not he had a gun, which that makes me wonder, did you even look at the video before making that statement? Because had you looked at that video before making that statement, you would not make a statement that you have to backtrack that is so critical in this type of case. So either you looked at the video and just said, okay, let's set a narrative that's convenient for us as police officers. Let's say that it's clear that he had a gun. Either you looked at the video and then lied, or you didn't look at the video and just made an assumption and tried to make an official statement out of an assumption, now having to backtrack that statement because the video is not definitively clear. Either way it goes, it shows a level of, it goes into the distrust, the lack of trust, the reason and the justification why many people do not trust the police. Because how do you make such a bold statement that is damning for the character of Keith Lamont Scott and then have to backtrack it immediately the next day after the family and other people see the video that you ostensibly saw first? That's part one. So part two, the police chief, has made it clear that we should, as the public, have no expectation that that he is going to release the video to the public. When asked about releasing the dash cam video, CMPD Chief Kerr Putney stated, "Transparency is in the eye of the beholder." What kind of, that's some Orwellian 1984 spin on reality. Transparency is not in the eye of the beholder, right? So this entire idea, this entire notion that you get to dictate to us what we should deem transparency, no, it doesn't work like that. So not only are we dealing with an erroneous statement at the beginning of the investigation, we're also dealing with a level of hubris in terms of the level of transparency that they want to give or don't want to give. In this case, which makes me ask a few questions, right? One, is the video so bad that you don't want to release it for fear of inflaming the situation? Actually, that's the only question. I said multiple questions. That's the only question. Because otherwise, if the video was clear and the video showed the narrative that you wanted to spin as police officers, that video would be out by now. because if for no other reason, a video showing Keith Lamont Scott being the aggressor and being a threat to the police officers would most certainly start to silence protesters. So whether, transparency for them, we can define it this way. Transparency for police, what's his name again? His name is right here, Kerr Putney. For Kerr Putney, transparency is only when it benefits their cause. Because had this video showed Scott as the aggressor, then of course they would release it as a tool to silence the protesters. Clearly, plain as day. All right, so that's the second aspect of that story. Here's the third aspect of the story that I keep mentioning night after night, and I know I only have a few thousand people who will watch and listen to this, so I don't have a big audience. I don't pretend to be able to sway a national conversation. Maybe if I tweet something and the right people retweet it, then yeah, we can affect the national conversation. But something I've been harping on that nobody else has, and I have not seen, and I'm highly disappointed in the fact that, is anyone going to ask why the officers approached this man in the first place when he was not the man listed on the warrant? I mean, where is the justification? Did he fit the description? Was he sitting in a vehicle similar to the one that the person in the warrant drives? Because their case is that they were going to serve a warrant. How do you go from going to serve a warrant on somebody to killing somebody else who's not even involved? And unless we answer that question, we'll always allow the narrative to start in the most convenient place for police officers, when they were the ones who created the conditions that led to either a confrontation or led to just a summary execution. Same thing out of Tulsa. What led this police officer, Betty, whoever, to approach Terrence Crutcher with so much aggression and hostility when she knew she was going to an abandoned or a broken down vehicle call? We have to start asking the right questions, or else we'll always be chasing these red herrings and these distractions. Oh, was Terrence Crutcher's window down? I don't care if his window was down. Why did they approach him with aggression and hostility when he was in need of help? And then was Terrence, so many names, Keith Lamont Scott, did he have a gun? Well, first of all, North Carolina is an open carry state. So even if he had a gun and the gun was visible, he was not a person listed on the warrant. Why did the police harass him or even say hello to him? Ultimately creating the situation. No matter what happened in that situation, it would not have happened had the police officers not approached him, and they need to be able to explain why they approached him in the first place. Same exact thing. If you can go through case after case, Walter Scott in North Carolina. Why was he being approached in the first place when he ended up getting 5 shots in the back? Go all the way back to Michael Brown. Everyone wants to start the conversation between the altercation. Nobody wants to mention that Darren Wilson drove down the street, cut them off, slung his door open, and said, "Get the F out the street." Instead of saying, "Hey guys, get out of the street." Instead of being a good officer friendly and saying, "Fellas, you might get ran over, get out of the street." Even driving by and honking your horn. Instead, you drive, cut them off, open the door, and say, "Get the F out the street." Nobody ever addresses the thing that starts the confrontation. Everyone always starts in the most convenient place for the narrative that the police officers want to spin. And I really do expect journalists to pick up and the media to pick up on this and say, wait a minute. Why did this situation get created in the first place? And in so many cases, in too many cases, it's an overzealous police officer who is doing something that shouldn't have been done. And I say it shouldn't have been done because had they not done it, these people would be alive today. So with the shooting of Keith Lamont Scott, They are not going to release the videos, but the video is under investigation. And according to Putney, transparency is in the eye of the beholder. Just, well, you know, if you define transparency, then we too can define transparency. So we're obviously going to have a collision of our definitions of transparency, no matter what pithy retort you give us next time.